Hello and welcome to Convenience Talks. I'm Katy Moses, founder and MD of KAM Media, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by Gavin Rothwell, who is the founder of Food Futures Insights. Gavin, thank you so much for joining me. I'm obviously very aware of who you are and what you do, but for anyone out there who isn't, could you just give us a brief introduction?
Of course, Katie, and thanks again for the opportunity to come on today. So we at Food Future Insights, we're all about food to go insights, retail insights as well, and particularly that cross section of food to go and retail, and how food to go is playing a bigger role in retail formats. And I think beyond that, looking forward to that future of food formats in general.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Gavin. Now, today is going to be all about the future. But can you just give us a bit of a summation of the last 12 months, which obviously have been tricky for all round, but specifically food to go must have suffered under this pandemic. You know, what have we seen happen over the last 12 months?
So yeah, clearly it's a time that's been very tricky for many of us, and I really do feel for a lot of the operators out there, particularly those focused on city centre locations. We've clearly seen footfall dramatically hit in those instances. And I think it is those city centres that have been hit hardest. I think the more encouraging thing now is we're starting to see more reopenings coming through, and there's definitely kind of more light on the horizon as we look forward to the next few months. So I think it's been at best mixed for food to go over the past year. We've seen some sectors do all right and others kind of really struggle. But kind of looking forward, I think kind of the positive thing is there's still a big opportunity out there, and many of those background consumer drivers that led to the growth and expansion previously, they're still very much in place. So I think we are more interested in food than ever before. We're still likely to be leading lifestyles where we're out and about when we're allowed to, and that plays into kind of that food to go opportunity. And I think when we put on top of that the considerations of how online is increasingly taking a bigger share of food retail overall, then actually I think what we're seeing now is more businesses across that broader food and drink spectrum starting to think a bit more about that food to go opportunity than ever before. So exciting times going forward, and lots of opportunity out there.
Absolutely, and the pandemic has thrown up a lot of opportunities for food to go, for hospitality, for convenience, and we're seeing a lot more blurring, I think, of those sort of three channels. You know, we're seeing a lot more collaboration. What do you think is going to be important going forward in food to go? What are your areas to watch?
So I completely agree in terms of that collaboration side of things. And I think that is actually a key trend that we're likely to see much more of going forward. Whether you call it collaboration, whether you call it partnerships, that's certainly an area of focus. And I think, to be honest, there's some great opportunities out there. We've seen some ways of doing things so far. So Pret, for example, launching their croissants and pain au chocolat into Tesco, but I think there are many more to come. And I think Sainsbury's is quite an interesting one in how they've partnered with different food to go brands. So working with Leon, for example, in terms of developing ranges within that. But actually, I think there's an opportunity to push beyond that. We look quite a lot at other markets around the world and at how food to go specialists are increasingly coming into that retail environment. And we're not really just talking about the likes of Starbucks here. We're talking about a fairly broad selection of different food to go specialists that are working with different retailers and actually getting under the same roof. So that is an opportunity to develop that much more going forward. And I think one to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hear a lot about sustainability, or we heard a lot about sustainability before the pandemic, and then we know that it became a little bit less important to consumers in the last 12 months because practicality and safety took over. What do you think what the agenda for sustainability within food to go looks like at the moment?
So, I mean, I think what we've seen over the past year is, as you say, Katie, it's inevitably had to take a little bit of a backseat. There've been more urgent issues, should we say, that needed to be addressed. And clearly for many, just continuing trading was tough enough on its own. But we will see that coming through increasingly to the fore. If you look at some of the kind of leaders across food to go worldwide, whether it's kind of manufacturers like Greencore, whether it's some of those more innovative food to go operators like Sweetgreen in the US, they've all got sustainability commitments ramping up significantly over the next couple of years, and that becoming effectively a more integral part of how they do business going forward.
Absolutely. And one of the other areas that I think has benefited really from the pandemic is the idea of local sourcing and getting food that has a provenance and a backstory that's relevant to the local area. Are we going to see an increase in local importance?
Do you know, I think that local one is a really, really interesting one, and the local community side of things is a really big opportunity right now. Well, I'm in St Albans now, but you kind of walk around the town and you see the queues outside the local independent coffee shops much more than any other type of outlet. So you can see that there's a real desire on the part of consumers right now in terms of helping those local businesses to survive and prosper. And that's a fascinating one going forward. I spend a lot of time looking at the Irish market, and I think that is a brilliant example to look at in terms of how some of those local products are really brought to the fore in terms of, well, across that food and beverage spectrum. And I think there's an opportunity for us to take learnings from there, as there is, to be honest, from many of the UK regions. So you look at how it's done in Wales, you look at how it's done in Devon and Cornwall. There's some brilliant examples out there, and I'd expect those types of executions to become more commonplace, which is, I think, good news. And I think there's tremendous variety and quality that can be brought out through some of those local operators.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that you hit the nail on the head there when you're talking about people wanting to support local businesses. You know, we do a lot of work in hospitality, and we're finding that consumers are very happy to support those local independent pubs and restaurants and bars, etc., because they know that they need it, essentially. If they want them to still be there, they've got to use them.
That's right. And I think just one point related to that as well, we started talking about that broader food to go opportunity and how the market had changed.
Yeah.
Clearly, we haven't been in city centres. We're still very much closer to home. So I think kind of what we've seen is a number of different businesses look to shift their focus in response to that. So Pret, for example, talking around how they were targeting more suburban and, I guess, commutable locations. That's one example. And I think more broadly, you're starting to see, should we say, both food to go specialists and retailers with stores in kind of those suburban, those commutable catchments, starting to think a bit differently about what their food to go opportunity might be. So maybe recognizing that there is the chance to develop the range in that space, because after all, we might be stuck working at home, but we don't necessarily want to be preparing our lunches every day.
I can't tell you how bored I am of my own cooking, Gavin. I really can't.
I
So
know
much
exactly
so
that
I'm
feeling.
getting lunch on Deliveroo once in a while now, just to change it up. Tell me what the future looks like for travel food to go then and roadside. What are we looking at?
So I mean, I think more broadly, that's a really interesting area of development right now. I'll probably leave the airport side to one side right now, but I think kind of the forecourt, the motorway services side of things is a really interesting one going forward. We're seeing a lot of thinking from forecourt operators right now, thinking, okay, our core driver of footfall in the future is likely to ebb away. How can we drive destination status to our sites going forward? And actually, food to go is a key route through which to do that. It's not the only one, but it's a one that's not easy to do, but it's a fairly obvious one to do and execute. But it's fraught with a few different pitfalls along the way, and I think making the right choices early on is really important. And linked to that, actually, myself and Benjamin Nordhaff from Rationale, and also Matt Kundrick, we've written a report focused on just guiding people through some of those key questions to ask themselves. So that's available for free. It's on LinkedIn. It's on futuresinsights.com, so my website. And clearly, we're happy to help in any way that we can around that, in terms of, I guess, helping people to think about those key things that are important as they look to upgrade or introduce their food to go proposition.
Well, fantastic. And we'll put a link when we put this up on socials so that people can link straight through to your website and have a look at that report. That sounds like it could be absolute gold dust for people out there that need to understand that particular channel.
Thank you, Katie. And I think just one interesting thing around that is that as consumers, our expectations, our demands of what we buy when we're out and about have dramatically increased over the past few years. So you really do need to take a close look at your food to go proposition pretty regularly, just to make sure it's up to scratch, because the movement is definitely towards more quality, more choice around that drive to get people to stop at your site over the 1, 5, 10 miles down the road.
Yeah,
I'll stop talking about forecourts now.
no, I find it fascinating, and I suppose as well that we've got some new missions that have kind of come to the forefront in food to go now. We were talking earlier a little bit about sort of, you know, dinner. Is food to go moving into dinner? What are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, I think more broadly, what's been really interesting over the past year is just that creativity in terms of how different businesses have thought about the missions that they can target, and how they can get their products to their customers. So, I mean, Gales is always a brilliant example of a business that's very much focused on, I guess, getting that home delivery piece in place with some really fantastic hampers as part of that, alongside some of their more regular lines. But I think more broadly, what kind of we're going to see more of going forward is different kind of operators looking to think about how they can sweat their assets better, how they can maybe take advantage of what are really strong brands which are held in high esteem by their customers, ticking all the boxes in terms of healthy, fresh, often organic and natural as well. And how can you create that? And how can you create an evening meal proposition off the back of that? Now, I don't think anyone's got the answer right now. We're seeing some experimentation underway. I think we can expect to see a lot more of that going forward. And that, again, might link into the whole kind of partnership with retail piece as we look to what that opportunity looks like going forward. But there are some really brilliant brands out there, and I think they've got the credentials to be able to do that if they can execute in the right way.
Fantastic. Gavin, that is the perfect place for us to thank you for your expertise. For anyone out there that wants to download the report, we will be linking to it at the bottom of this post. So please click through and benefit from Gavin's experience and knowledge. Gavin, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Katie.